What do you think of India's general strategic plan in terms of dealing with China as, a competitor, as somebody who's like another like very populous, powerful country in Asia? Do you think that the Indian government has a good plan for dealing with China? Not necessarily military, also just, how to deal with the economic competition, things like that.
Yes, trade-wise, in economic dealings, they start with trade. Trade-wise, China exports $100 billion every year to India. So that is quite significant. It's not a small amount. India does not export as much. It exports just about $30 billion. So it is not as if exports by India, if it were to stop tomorrow, it will have a huge impact on its economy. No, it will not. Uh, China may find that exporting to India, if it were to stop, will affect it in many ways because once you export to a country like India, then the message goes. Many multinationals use it as a testing ground that if a product like the cup you're drinking from gets accepted in India, it will also get accepted, let's say, in Brazil or South Africa. That's the general standard of trading uh, employed by multinationals. So China would find that if it loses this market, then its market for mobile phones, for example, will get affected in other countries also, because South Korea may take over or an American export house might take over, and that will become an endorsement for those products. So economically, China stands to lose more than India if the relations there were to snap. But it is not India's intention to have any break in the trading relations. In fact, we would much rather that they grow so that understanding grows at various levels. Diplomacy is another method by which you try to calm down things, and that is an ongoing process. And hopefully, it will have some positive result when uh, that result is needed desperately. So, to bring down the temperatures.
So you would mention how if India reduces a certain type of trade with China, that has a spillover effect. Over the last few years, the the India has largely eliminated the sale of Huawei phones inside China, or sorry, inside India. So has there been a spillover effect from that particular uh, change in trade?
Well, that has happened recently. But to give you another example, after 2020, India banned TikTok. Uh, there was an effect in other countries also. Some other countries, including America, started looking more closely at TikTok's operations in America. Huawei, it is a recent decision, and certainly it is going to have an effect. To give you another example, Sri Lanka is in such a miserable economic position that I'm sure even they would not be importing much from Huawei any longer. So these things have a run of their own, and they find their level once uh, people start wondering whether it is in their best interest to import uh, equipment from Huawei or some other country.
I mean, I wouldn't be so upset if America banned TikTok, largely because it's stupid,
Uh,
but also the massive security risk in tracking all the users. But that hasn't happened.
Well, I asked you whether we are going to be talking on Zoom, and you very rightly mentioned about this new method, which I had not heard of. But Zoom is Chinese owned, and yet most people are now using Zoom at great security risk to themselves and to their industries.
Right. Well, that's specifically why we don't use Zoom.
Exactly. So you are wise.
It kind of goes back to the old days of like Americans wouldn't watch a movie with a communist in it, and now we're like, hey, let's use a TikTok. It's giving all of our information directly to the communist government.
Well, I mean, a large corporation using Zoom for corporate meetings could be potentially more dangerous. And it may not be just the largest corporations because they have their own internal stuff, but the sort of medium-sized companies or technology startups, like they don't have their own in-house software. So maybe Zoom is just the most convenient. It's the cheapest.
But if they knew it was linked to communists,
I don't think
They
that
wouldn't change their view. No.
I don't know.
Chris, it's not the 40s.
If it's slightly
It can be
cheaper,
again.
it's better. That's what I always say. If it's slightly cheaper, it's probably better. Right? Isn't that how India is viewing things?
In terms of purchasing things, equipment, and so on. Did you mean that?
Right. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's like you talked about how, of course, America does this too, right? But in India, you said the toy industry, right? You get slightly cheaper from China. Even the religious icon industry, because it's slightly cheaper to have Ganesh statue made in China than to make it in India. Like, right? I mean, that's been going on for a long time because for most people, most of the time, if it's slightly cheaper, and it's better.
You're absolutely right. That's the human nature. So if you can save $1, why not? Or if you can save ₹1, why not? But it has larger implications. But to take your question another way, for example, when 2020 the Galwan fighting took place, there were many people who said we will pay an extra rupee or extra dollar, but buy made in elsewhere product, made in India or made in Japan or USA or some other country, but we will not buy a made in China product. Unfortunately, that sentiment lasted only for a few weeks or months. Then again, the same consideration took over. So that is why this is the third time I'm repeating it, that FBI directors comment that it needs a whole of society approach. That is very important. Or to give you another example in a different way, when I was working on my book, I found that Lee Kuan Yew was one of the better informed leaders on China. And a couple of his comments struck me. For example, he said, America is the greatest military power in history. Next sentence was, China will be the greatest military power the world has ever seen. Now, coming from Lee Kuan Yew, who was a well-regarded Prime Minister of Singapore, considered a great statesman, that has a very insidious effect. First, the two statements together mean that China is now competitor to America. The second step of that statement is that China will overtake America. So it's the same thing. If an Indian likes a toy, someone in Brazil would also like that toy. If Lee Kuan Yew says something, people, let's say in Johannesburg or Paris or whatever, would listen to his comment. If that wise man is saying this, there must be some truth in it. So China has already won one victory. And the same thing, he also made a comment when President Xi was first sworn in 2012. He said, wash the span. Now, just that comment, wash this man, means that this man is going to be something big. So, at a different level, you and I also need to watch our comments, because if you praise, let's say, a Chinese good or a Chinese leader or a Chinese military power, that word spreads. Because the other person we are talking to will not think about it, will not analyze it, he will accept it, because it is either coming from a great leader like Lee Kuan Yew, or a friend like us, or a person who seems to have read something about China. Even in our daily interaction, we need to be careful. And for the fourth time, I'm talking about the FBI director when he says it needs a whole of society response. Unfortunately, we as a free world, as a democratic world, are not thinking about that whole of society response.
Well, I know you said that the 2020s, this decade, is a window of opportunity for China. Why?
Well, number one, the world is not prepared for China. Number two, the Western world, has got engaged in what is happening in Ukraine. So, to free itself of that will take time. That is the first step. I mean, you can't have all the American equipment. For example, the new defense chief of UK, Britain, said when he took over a couple of weeks back that it will take us years to replenish the defense equipment that we have supplied to Ukraine. So that means UK is in a particularly vulnerable position till that replenishment is complete. Similarly, for other countries that have got engaged in Ukraine, it will mean that much less resources available. For example, in case China decides to do something in the next year or next 2 years or 3 years or whatever. So I do not know whether USA is making the same historical mistake as it did during Kissinger Nixon time, that to take care of Soviet Union they encouraged China, now to take care of Russia, something which could perhaps have been tackled diplomatically. It need not have exploded in the way it has exploded. And President Biden need not have encouraged Russia, in fact, to nibble a little bit of Ukraine. But all that is history. Even now, if diplomacy can reduce the tensions or reduce the war, then the free world maybe, or the Western world, may be better prepared to face the challenge that is much greater.